This is part 4 of the Emerson Gen 2 Craftsman Drill Press Rebuild series. If you haven't seen part 3, click the link at the top of the screen. In this video, we will be prepping for paint, priming, painting, and polishing and cleaning up some other parts. Hello everyone, I'm Jeff and welcome to my shop. We got a lot to cover, so let's get to it. Okay, so before we can start painting, we've got to clean up the parts that are going to get painted, and this is the guard that goes on the top of the head that the belt cover connects to. And you know, we tried using simple green on it, we tried using citrus strip on it, and it still has paint on it. So now we'll break out the wire wheel on the grinder, and that will definitely remove the paint. So after we finish with the guard, we've got the capacitor cover. Obviously I can't get to the inside of it with the wire wheel, so we'll be using an additional step for some of this stuff after that. But after we've wire wheeled that, we've got the motor mount. Really, it's these motor parts that had the most paint on them that wasn't coming off. The cast iron stuff, it came off with the citrus strip, no problem. So this is the belt cover, and as you can see, it's bent down at the end where the pivot pin goes. So I'm just bending it back in place, and I'll use a couple pieces of bar steel to help square it up as I bend it and tap it back into alignment. So this was the only Emerson that got a metal belt cover. All the Emersons after this got plastic belt covers. But it's really not a problem. Just need to work with it. Now you'll notice that the inside of that belt cover's got this, I have no idea what it is, some kind of paste or wax or grease or something, but it took a wire wheel and mineral spirits to get it out of there. And it's on the inside walls as well, so I ended up using a paint scraper for a lot of it as in addition to the wire wheel. But once I got it to the point that you can kind of see it now, the mineral spirits cleaned it right up. There's the paint scraper. Just trying to get it out of the corners where the wire wheel wasn't doing such a hot job. So this whole thing took me, I don't know, probably about an hour and a half just working on this stuff, which I have, like I said, I don't know what it is, but it was all over inside here. So working on the exterior of it, we first took a Scotch-Brite wheel and the angle grinder to it. And there's a decent amount of pitting on this. I tossed around a couple of different ideas. Obviously next I went to the palm sander, and I sanded this thing with I think that's 80 grit. So we could make a whole new one of these, a new belt cover. But that would be a lot of fabrication that I didn't want to mess with. We could also cover it in Bondo and then sand it to get rid of some of that pitting. But in the end, I think I got most of the pitting down with the sanding to the point that when we go to prime this, the primer's going to fill a lot of the pitting in. And then when we spray the paint on there, it's going to seal all that, and I think it's going to turn out pretty decent. So we don't need to mess with Bondo or remake this thing. So next I've got a small Scotch-Brite pad on the end of the Fordham, which is basically just a Dremel. And I'm using it to get the paint out of the nooks and crannies on these two end frames for the motor. And then there is the motor mount pivot that I'm doing the same. That's also how I'm going to clean up the inside of the capacitor cover. After that, we broke out our bottle brushes and used the brass wire brushes for all of the bores in the base and in the head. So I'm just going to clean them up, and then we'll be masking them off. A lot of bores in that head casting. So next we're going to be using masking tape, and we're just going to mask all of the stuff that's not going to get paint. So all the bores will get masked, and the very top of the spindle bore will get masked as well. The shelf on the very top of the head where the guard mounts was not painted by the factory, but I'm going to paint it. I don't see any reason why it shouldn't be painted, so it'll get painted. So this masking process for just the head alone probably takes about an hour. And since I'm going to be painting the inside of the head, I don't want that masking tape protruding too far down inside the head either. Otherwise, it's going to mean that there will be areas that aren't going to get primer or paint. And those will be sources for rusting in years to come. So I'm trying to be, as meticulous as I can when I mask, to just make sure that we can access everything we need to access when we're painting it. So again, on the base, we mask the bores. There's 3 of them inside the base. There's one on the very bottom, one in the middle, and then one on the top. And each one of those bores is roughly about 1/2 inch in thickness. So I can take this 1-inch masking tape and basically just cut it in half, and it gives me a pretty good mask there. So lastly, we'll be masking the inside of the bores for the bearings in the end frames. And for that, I just take some old 1/2-inch thick rubber floor mats that I cut up with my bandsaw and then press them in there. And they do a good job of masking it, and it's easier than messing with the tape. And if you watched the 150 series, I did the same thing to the end bells on that motor as well. So next we're going to go ahead and spray the primer on. So the primer that I'm using is just a self-etching or metal etching primer. I think it's Rust-Oleum. You can get it at auto parts stores. I got most of it at Walmart. Walmart seems to have the best price out there. And it's just a gray primer that etches into the metal and bonds really good with the metal, so that when you apply the paint, the primer is that medium that allows the paint to adhere to the product. So we shoot the primer on and make sure we've got a good coating of it. In big pieces like this, I'll spray the bottom, and then I'll wait about 15 minutes, and then I'll flip it and then spray the top. So any of these parts that are not hanging are going to get done that way, where I'll spray half of them, let them wait about 15 minutes, and then I can flip them and do the other half. Like I said, we're going to coat the inside of the head as best as we can. And for this drill press, it took about 3 cans of primer for everything. It's hard to put a lot of primer on the inside or even paint on the inside without having it drip on the edges of where you're spraying it. So you just gotta, work with it. But that's why I do the inside first, so I can come back and clean up the outside if I have to before I spray the primer on the outside. And for the paint for this, we're going to be using an automotive paint on this, but there is a rattle can option for all of the later era Emerson drill presses. And I'll go over that when we get to it, but unfortunately COVID caused a serious shortage, and this is it. It's a Krylon Industrial Tough Coat. And there's the number. It's a machinery blue-gray Alpha 0032907. I was buying it from Granger, and my first Gen 4, this one, that's what it's painted with. It does a great job. But I couldn't get it during COVID, so this is what I ended up going with. That the commercial one is an automotive paint that I got from PPG. And I'll show you what that is. So this is a Performance AOK 200. And the color code is that 3134 Case Gray 920255, I believe. Yeah. I took in the a part from that drill press and had them color match it. And you just apply it with that spray gun. You strain it, and it cleans up with that Xylol or whatever that was. But it is an acrylic, but it's an oil-based acrylic. So you need an air compressor, obviously, to be able to shoot this stuff, unless you're going to buy those CO2 cans and waste a lot of money trying to spray it that way. But this stuff is very durable. And once it's cured, it's pretty much impervious to chemicals. Like I said, it's a commercial product. It goes on really nice. You can get it in a whole bunch of different finishes. This is a satin finish. I didn't want to go with a high gloss at the time, or even a gloss. Now I'm kind of thinking that the gloss would have looked better, because with that satin finish, it looks lighter in color than it actually is, especially on camera. Like you can see how dark it is here when I'm applying it because it's wet. But once it dries, it looks, well, it looks like that commercial drill press you saw. But I do like the color. It's a nice color. If I was doing a 150, I would go with a darker gray, almost a charcoal gray. But for the Emerson Gen 2, 3s, 4s, and 5s, this color is a really good color for them. So just like the primer, I'm going to spray everything and then wait for it to cure. The cure time for handling this paint is about an hour without any heat added. And again, I'm in Georgia with 100% humidity and 90-degree temperatures. So plus it was raining when I painted most of this stuff. Now they recommend you apply 2 coats. So all of this got 2 coats. So I'll repeat that process a second time, but yeah, so it goes on really good. It looks good. It's very durable. It's pretty close to factory original. Cleans up easily. It's just, and you don't have to mix any hardener like a lot of automotive paints. You have to mix a hardener with them, and this is straight out of the can. Stir it up, run it through the strainer, put it in the sprayer, and shoot it. And then anything you didn't shoot, any paint left in that sprayer, I can pour right back into the can. It wasn't too expensive at all. Definitely cheaper than the rattle can option. I think those Krylon cans were like 14 something a piece. And I think I paid like 75 bucks or something for a whole gallon of this stuff, which I haven't even gone through. I've painted 3 drill. This is the 3rd drill press with it now. I think I've only used like the top 2 inches of that can, of that gallon. But with it being an automotive paint, you're definitely going to want some sort of ventilation system, and you're going to want to wear a protective mask like I am. You should be doing that for all paint, but especially with industrial products like this. So after an hour, I can manipulate the parts so that I can finish painting them. And then I'll let them sit overnight, and then I'll come back and do the 2nd coat. And wait an hour between each one of those sprays. But there's all the parts after they're pretty much cured. I haven't removed any of the masking yet, but that's the parts. So next we got cleaning up more parts with the wire wheel. So here I'm just cleaning the splines on the spindle with the wire wheel. It gets down in between those splines nicely. And if there's any burr on those splines, I'll be able to see it at this point. And then I'm cleaning up the feed stop rod that has a scale on it. And after I've cleaned it up, then I'm going to polish the feed stop rod. So we're just using the Mother's Mag and aluminum polish, and then we'll buff it with that wheel. And then cleaning up the lock handles for the table and the headlock. There's quite a few parts that get wire wheeled. So all the stuff that got wire wheeled, I lay out on a towel and then I spray it down with, well, this is called Super Slick Stuff. And it's a penetrating lubricant. If I don't have it, a lot of times I'll use the aerosol version of Super Lube. But I got some more of this stuff, so I'm using it. It's what I like to use. And here I'm just using the bottle brush, brass wire brush, to clean out anything that has a hole in it. And next we're chucking on the lathe the sleeve for the Jacobs chuck. And we're going to clean it up. And so this is going to get dry sanded with 80 all the way up to 320, and then wet sanded 400, 600, 800, and 1000. And then we'll apply the mother's mag and aluminum polish to it. And it cleaned up real nice. And next I went ahead and applied the chuck to the spindle, put the spindle inside my lathe. And so now I'm cleaning up the chuck body, and it's the same process. Dry sand, then wet sand, and then polish. But it's really dangerous because it's got some sharp edges on it in that center section. So you got to be really careful with it. But after we polished it, looks really good. Now, this is the hub, and normally I don't do this. Normally when I'm rebuilding a drill press, the hub is what the hub is. But this one was really, really pitted, and it was real dull. The chrome was really dull, was not going to shine up no matter what I did to it. So I said, all right, we're just going to sand it, and then we're going to polish it. So again, starting at 80 grit all the way up to 320 with dry sanding, and then 400 to 1000 wet sanding. And then we applied the mother's mag and aluminum polish, and it cleaned up really nice. So kind of happy how that turned out. Not perfect, but way better than it was. And the last thing I'm going to be working on is the switch plate for the electrical components. It's aluminum, so obviously I want to polish that sucker up like it's chrome, which means hand sanding the heck out of it. And I'm just getting started on it on this video. Between now and the next video, I'm probably going to break out some power tools to get it done, but that is the last thing that I worked on for this video. So I've got a plan for the table for this drill press, and hopefully this weekend I'll know for sure whether or not that's going to happen. And then I've received a couple of parts from my good friend Frank Lee, so I'll discuss those in the next video and how they differ from the parts on this one. But that wraps it up. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe, and I will see you next time.